Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru
Waheguru
Ji
Ji
Ki
Fateh.
Fateh. Welcome back to the Politics Show. Today we are joined by Labour MP Afzal Khan. Afzal was elected to the Manchester Gorton seat in 2017, shortly before being appointed as Shadow Immigration Minister by Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn. Afzal, only one place to start really, Brexit of course. With so much uncertainty still surrounding the issue, do you believe that we need to see a second referendum?
Well, look, I'm concerned personally with the Brexit, with the whole referendum campaign. I'm someone who's actually Remain. Manchester City is a Remain city, but nevertheless, we accept the decision as a country. It was to leave. But I don't think we wanted this mess that we've seen. So we're 2.5 years down the road, and the deal Theresa May has brought home for us to approve actually satisfies no one. And that's why she's experiencing these difficulties, both from the opposition, who are almost all united on this, but also a sizable within her own party. So that then takes us through what actually happens in the vote.
Yeah. And what are you most concerned about the prospect of actually crashing out of the EU without a deal?
Well, I think crashing out without a deal is not good for Britain. And figures show that it's not good. It does the biggest damage to our economy. And we've got to do whatever we can to avoid that. But it also actually is not good for the European Union. So it's not good for both sides. So that's why I think we need to think hard and look ahead and see how can we make sure that we get a deal which actually works for Britain and also works for the European Union.
And the issue of Brexit itself has almost completely split Britain. Do you believe in the long term that we can truly recover from this and unite communities?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things which I have a deep concern about is the whole idea of referendum. And that's why I'm not too keen having another one. Because on principle, I think Britain is a parliamentary democracy. We elect our MPs. Their job is to make these tough decisions, these difficult decisions. Their job with experience actually should be allow them to scrutinize it much more effectively and come to the right conclusion. So getting through the referendum actually is not too sophisticated system, is too crude for a complex subject. But I've also seen the experience of this now, both in the Scottish referendum. I actually was there campaigning and saw how actually that divided up the Scottish people. The families were desperate. Their whole family was being split apart. And the same thing I saw in Britain now with the EU referendum. And then, of course, on top of this, you have this whole increase of far-right activities, the hate idea, you are next, to leave the country. So all that actually is not helpful. So more the reason I'm reluctant for another referendum, because I think there's already been enough division. We've got to do whatever we can to actually bridge this division. This is not what Britain is all about. Britain's never been like this, and we don't want to be like this.
No. And I think it's not even, never mind a day, not even a minute goes by without seeing the issue of Brexit, whether it's online, in the papers. Do you think somewhat we're losing sight of some of the other major issues that our country is facing due to focusing solely on Brexit?
Yeah, and I feel it myself. I think something like 75–80% of the time actually is being spent on Brexit. What I find it painful actually more than that, because I understand that this is big. It's a decision which is going to have a huge impact on our country. It's going to have a huge impact on our future generation. So it is a big one decision. So I wouldn't mind actually spending this sort of time if I could see result. What I find it painful is we're spending this amount of time, 75–80% of the time, and there's nothing to show. What they've done. So the Tory government actually has really made a mess. This whole project is a Tory party project, and the whole country is paying the price. That's not what's acceptable.
And there's a lot of talk, obviously, as well of the prospect of an early general election, especially if Theresa May does not get that deal through Parliament. Do you think our nation wants to see an early general election?
I think nobody wants to see a general election, but equally nobody wants to see this mess.
Yeah.
So the question then is, how do you get out of this mess? We've seen this, that this has been a Tory project. We've seen their infighting. They still haven't resolved it. So where do you move next? Do you simply get rid of Theresa May and put another leader in? Well, that's not going to solve their problem. So probably the best problem to solve, the best way of solving this problem is to go to the public, and to hopefully public will give a strong mandate to one of the parties, and with a strong mandate then you move forward with the EU and say, look, you've seen the votes, Parliament has rejected this deal is not good enough, let's have a proper chat about this, right? Let's have different those lines which actually work for you and for us, so that we have a good deal which works for Britain and for the European Union.
And if we went to the polls tomorrow, do you truly believe, hand on heart, that Labour has what it takes to win a general election?
I think, you know, despite you hear so much in the media about Labour's not doing anything, when was it the last time, you know, the sitting government has lost 8 votes? Last week alone, they lost twice.
Yeah.
So they must be doing something right, yeah? And I think the second point is, this whole 8 years austerity, I think it's taken its toll on the public, you know. Our whole public services, anything you look at is crumbling now. The fact that homelessness is at a record level, the fact that food banks are being opened is a record level, poverty is an issue. You know, my own constituency, you know, our young people is the 3rd highest in the country. Why?
Yeah.
Why in Britain, which has got the 5th, 6th strongest economy in the world, we should be ending up like this? So people, I think, are genuinely questioning. Year after year of these cuts have meant that our public services are struggling. They can't carry on. There has to be a change of direction. And how will you get this if you don't change a government? I think Labour Party has those answers. They would strengthen these public services, and people want to see that.
And just staying on that topic of austerity, do you believe in these difficult times across the country that potentially immigrants especially have been somewhat used as a bit of an easy target to be blamed for these services, the effect that we are seeing on public services at the minute?
Yeah, I mean, sadly, this is the tragedy in a sense that whenever austerity comes along, there is a section of people who wants someone to be blamed, and it's the last one who's in who usually gets the blame. Yeah, that's how it works. There's a pattern here. Yeah, it's not right. It's not the immigrants who have caused this austerity. It's the financial crisis. It's the bankers. Bankers are laughing down to their bank, you know, getting millions more bonuses and stuff. But it's the poor, ordinary people who are actually paying the price. So we need to lay the blame where it lies. And the government's policies, who have been too busy giving cuts to the rich people and yet cuts in the services to the rest of us.
Yeah.
That's not acceptable. You know, those with the broader shoulders should carry the weight. And I think the bankers have been primarily responsible. And we, the public, collectively, we bailed them out. They're certainly not doing anything to bail us out. And that's not acceptable.
Yeah. And as Shadow Immigration Minister, do you believe that our immigration policies do need reform?
I mean, I've felt that with the referendum, there was a real opportunity. Because if you look at the whole British immigration system, it has been sort of piecemeal developed.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most complex you will find. Even the Home Office themselves sometimes even don't know what the rules are. So with the coming out of EU, it allowed us the opportunity to have a new system which actually is streamlined and also made more effective, so that it's fit for the 21st century. You know, the world we are living in now, more and more movement is taking place. It's more easy for all of us to move around. So therefore, we need to be having policies which deals with those changes, and at the same time has the flexibility to look at the need of our economy, so that we can pick up then wherever those talent and experience and professional people we need to strengthen our economy, so they're allowed to brought in. At the same time, have that humanitarian element where it allows the family members to join. At the moment, we have a system of immigration which actually is more equipped to tear families apart than to join the families. For any good society, you need to have good, strong families. So that system clearly needs to look at. The student element, we're one of the best. There's at least 30 plus leaders in the current world who actually have studied here. It's an amazing soft power that we have.
Yeah.
And we get these students coming in, double, treble fees, subsidizing our home students as well, and we're able to use their brain power as well to actually do more experiments, more inventions. All that strengthens us. So what's our problem with that? Yeah, we should welcome them and make sure the system is flexible to allow that. Yeah, so there's lots of different ways we can look at this and then sort of make sure that the policies which we have are effective for our needs.
Of course. Afzal, we've seen alarming levels of people in need overseas due to the refugee crisis. Do you believe that we, as a society, should be doing more to help people overseas?
I actually believe the whole world can do more. I've just come back from Lebanon, where I saw these Syrian refugees in Bekaa Valley. And in Lebanon, it's a small country, it's a developing country under a huge economic pressure, and yet they've taken in over 1 million people. So it's 1 in 4. Yeah. And I think the problem we have is the world is now working together. So the burden is too much on some countries, and others are just dragging their feet. And I also find it difficult because I think 80% of the burden is being carried by the developing countries, whereas the capacity to carry the load, even for financially point of view, is those countries which are developed. Yeah. So we need to look at perhaps a new world order in which we have a new system of making sure that we all work together when there's an issue like this. And we should also be stepping back and looking at some of the ideas like Labour Party has. How do we push peace? How do we give peace a chance? How do we help to resolve some of these conflicts instead of fueling them, pumping in more arms? It's not helping anybody, because the circle then means there'll be more pressure on the refugees, and more people only leave their homes when they don't feel safe. That's the reason. Because when I've been there in Lebanon, I've spoken to so many families. Every single one of them wanted to go back. And every single one of them felt the reason they can't go back is that it's not safe. So that's why it's so important that we get that right. Give peace more chance, share the burden. We can do it.
And your background, you were born in Pakistan and you were adopted out of poverty as a child. Do you believe that it's your experiences which have sort of truly shaped you and made you want to sort of help others that bit more because you've gone through it yourself?
Yeah, I think we all are product of our experience, and my experience has been some journey, being adopted at a young age, coming here, then being brought up here, left school with no qualification, started as a laborer. It's taken me through the journey of the life with the experience of all sorts of different way of life, and so I can relate to things much better. And I fundamentally believe there is enough in the world for everyone. It's usually the greed which causes the problem, and how do we check that, and how do we get others to think about others, so that we work together. So I think there's enough in the world. We can all be better, and it's about making sure that we work together.
And you've been a Lord Mayor, an MEP, obviously then an MP, and now Shadow Immigration Minister. Where do you see yourself in, say, 10 years or so on the political front?
Yeah, I mean, it probably surprised you, my answer, but I never think about it as a position. I think about it as service, and for me, serving others is actually very important. It's part of who I am, it's part of my faith, which says, that the best person is the one who serves others. So the service, it's the same with the Sikh faith, serving actually is the core at the heart of it. So it's this which drives me So wherever I find myself, whatever opportunity I have, I will do my best to serve people.
And how is life working under Jeremy Corbyn?
I think he's an amazing person. He's an amazing individual with amazing track record, who has always sort of gone for peace, yeah. Who actually cares about other people, who goes out of his way really to help others, and who wants to see a society, where there is opportunity for all, yeah. And I find him a great leader. He's done quite a lot for the Labour Party, actually. Most people, actually, when you listen to media, they sort of, I think, don't do justice to him. I don't see a single politician better than him on human rights. He's got an amazing track record of that, yeah. He's been consistent in things. I think if you look at what he's done in the Labour Party, it's the biggest political movement in Europe. Which leader has done that? Such engagement. If you look at the young people, they love him everywhere he goes. I've seen it with my own eyes. Which other leader has done that? If you look at the last election, the party was about 20 points behind, and yet we didn't win the election, but he took about 50 more seats.
Yeah.
It certainly messed Teresa's plan up because she thought she'd get a landslide.
Yeah.
So I think he's got a lot of strengths, but let's not forget this. Look, Jeremy is also individual, and as an individual, we all have strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, of course.
So for me, it's as a Labour Party is how do we make sure we make most of his strengths, and then how do we help to strengthen the weak area? And I no doubt he would be a great Prime Minister.
So I take it from your answer, there's absolutely no doubt that he is the right person to lead the Labour Party into the next election, whenever that is.
He is. Look, the guy just won twice with such a huge electorate in the Labour Party with 500,000 membership, hands down with anybody else. I think he has every right to lead us in the next election.
Yeah. And along with the Conservatives, there's also been a lot of infighting within the Labour Party. Do you fear that there's a possibility that the Labour Party could actually completely split in years to come, with MPs branching off and potentially forming a new political party?
I think when I think about it, and the experience I have within the Labour Party, I think certainly there's been a phase where there was a lot of infighting, particularly when he got elected in the first time around, between that and the second time he got elected.
Yeah.
I think since he's been elected second time, I think this whole internal fighting actually has gone down quite a lot. I'm not saying that there isn't any, and you wouldn't expect that actually, because any political party, there will be difference of opinions. And when you have difference of opinion, there will be some who have a strong difference of opinion, So you'll get those tensions. But overall, I think we're in a much better shape. And just look at the Conservative Party as our rivals, see where they are. We're miles ahead of them actually, with nothing like this.
And do you sometimes understand why some people in the British public have sort of lost faith with British politics due to everything that is going on at the moment?
I can understand that. I think it's a difficult time that we've gone through, the whole financial crisis, etc. I think there's a sizable people who felt ignored, nobody cares about them, feel left behind, so I can understand that as well. And then you have sections, who are the far right elements, who got nothing other than to pump negativity, sensationalist ideas, some with no solutions. And then you have a media culture which also looks at negativity at the heart of it. Everything they report is based actually about negativity. They forget the huge area of positive things that go on in any society. So that I think has an impact as well. But it's the job of the political leadership, I think, to provide answers for those difficult questions. And I think they need to do that. And the more we do that, the more relevant we will be, and the less some of these difficulties will be.
Another issue we're seeing in the headlines as well, day by day, is universal credit. We're hearing tragic stories every single week. Have you been quite concerned by the rollout of universal credit? And do you believe there may be a complete rethink by the Tories? Could we see a potentially new system brought in, or do you think it's here to stay?
Yeah, well, I would like to see it scrapped.
Yeah.
I think the way they're doing it is causing more damage. It's not actually helping. So the way they're trying to implement it, there's a real issue about it. But I also think there's a bigger fundamental problem is the amount of energy we put in to save pennies and forget those pounds which people are stealing. Yeah. So those on the upper end of the society, you know, those who are doing tax avoidance, those billions, I'm interested actually getting after them than someone who's on the poverty line and is getting a pound here, a pound there. That's, come on. So those, our priority in that sense, I think as a society, we need to look at that. And I think we should be looking at where can we get fair society, how can we get that? And those who are not carrying their fair share, how do we make sure they do? And I think that's the bit.
And do you think the universal credit is largely linked to this increasing level of homelessness? Do you think that's tackling universal credit is integral to tackling homelessness?
Well, there's been a number of research which shows actually that it's not helping. It's pushing people more to further poverty. It's making people actually more homeless with the way they pay the system and all that. That's all those issues are there. But what is clear is the system as a whole is actually not doing enough for those who need it the most. And that's the bit we need to focus on. So to make sure that there is sufficient help available so they can pick up their life, they can get on with their life, get on with their jobs, you know. And if those issues are not resolved, more and more people will be pushed below the poverty line, more on the poverty, more of these food banks, more people being homeless. That's not, nobody wants to see that. We shouldn't be having this in Britain in 21st century.
And as a former police officer, what are your thoughts on the future of policing in Britain? And do you believe that the public are at risk, as we are seeing obviously funding being reduced, but the Tories pledging to put more in?
Well, when I'm sitting there and listen to them, I always find that they're usually quite good at nice warm words, but then when you look at it in the action point of view, then you find that there's always a gap. So this Tory party, law and order party, but what we're seeing in reality as a former police officer who also spent time with the police in the summer to see what actually is happening at the front line, it's absolutely clear. They have a huge pressure. You know, we've had 21,000 police officers cut. And then the changes nature of things as well. It's also piling pressures. And I saw that. And so I think really we need to do more to make sure there are sufficient funds available, sufficient officers are there to actually to make sure when we need them, they're there. You know, I've come across cases when I think police should have been there and police have not been able to get there. It's not that they don't want to. They just don't have the resources. They don't have the manpower. The workload is so much, you know. That's what needs to actually stop.
Of course. And moving on to the housing crisis that Britain is facing, would you be happy to see Greenbelt ripped up, to see more development taking place across the country to ensure houses are in place for people?
I think number one, I would say that consecutive governments, includes Labour, includes the Tories, have actually not done enough. For too long, the pressure has been to sell off the stock, the social housing which with the councils etc. have, and not being replaced. So that has increased the pressure. So we need to have policies actually which allows us to have sufficient houses to be built. Labour Party is clear on that we want to make sure that more houses are being built. Then the question is, you know, about the green belt. Well, look, what's more important? I accept that there has to be a balance, but I rather see some houses being built where there's a need than seeing people homeless, people who can't afford buying a house because there's a shortage of houses or the prices keeps going up. And then on the side, we need a green belt. There's a huge green belt still around in the country. You know, it's only about 7-8% which is a belt country. The rest is still available. So I don't think we need to be too rigid about it, but nor should it be the quickest jump to go to the green belt first because it's cheaper. We need to maximize what we have. We need to make sure that those houses which are not sort of fit for human habitation, they're made to be fit. We need to be making sure the brown sites that we have, they're actually utilized. And then if there's a need, then I have no problem looking at the green belt as well. But I wouldn't want to see green belt first and the others left behind. So it's that order which is the key bit.
And would you like to see local authorities sort of get tougher on those who have empty properties? They are vacant and they're staying there. Do you think councils should, be more proactive?
I'm absolutely quite happy with the councils to be more proactive. I would like to see them being more proactive. We need to be maximizing what we have. I think I would be happy to see councils actually building more houses as well, like Manchester is trying to have a go at this, which is great. I think we should have done a long time ago.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And just to finish off, what's your number one objective for the next 12 months? Is there anything particularly that you have in mind that you would like to achieve?
Well, I look at it, my number one priority is to serve the people of Manchester Gorton, 12 months or till I'm in position.
Yeah.
The second bit I find it difficult to deal with is the poverty. I just told you in Manchester Gorton, it's the third highest in the country. I find it shocking.
Yeah.
I don't think this should happen in a city like Manchester, the world-class city it is. We need to be thinking, how do we have a better distribution of the wealth? How can we help the young people actually to give them opportunities?
Yeah.
And I've got some ideas and some projects which I'm working on in order to do that. My job nationally is a shadow immigration minister, so I will do my best to challenge this hostile environment of the Tory government and to make sure we have a policies where the Labour does come into power. We have a fair system which works for Britain.
Yeah. Thanks, Afzal.
Thank you.
That's all for today. Thank you for joining us, and make sure to tune in next week for The Politics Show. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.